time to look back sometimes and reflect on life, and we get feedback if we listen properly. Feedback from our feelings, from our environment, from the people around us. And from this feedback we get a chance to adjust, to adapt, to change, to recreate most of the time. And a little bit about my story gives me a lot to reflect about this incredible toolkit, incredible gift which came in my life, and that is permaculture. One of the biggest lessons that I got in life, actually, was that at the critical moments in life when we find ourselves resisting something, the more that we resist and that we create this friction and this opponents to our own feeling and to the way of the flow that life is actually presenting us with, the more that we stop something from burning and happening. However, when we learn actually to just feel this resistance and we allow it, and we ask that question as to, okay, what now? Or okay, what is there now as an opportunity? Where is the universe guiding me towards? That is the moment when, if we allow it to, most of the time, something big happens, something that might actually change our lives. In essence, everything is changing our lives all the time, but those moments are quite critical, especially from my experience in my own life, and from a lot of others that I have shared these experiences with. I get to witness that we all share this commonality between us, which is, yes, these are the moments that have actually been a stepping stone in our life to go from one stage into another. And a little bit about my own story was this, that a number of years back, it was one moment where I was on the road traveling in Australia and I had everything stolen on the road. It was a moment which was easy to give up, to pack up, go back home, or else to just be in resistance, to be in like, why me, and pity myself, and why am I going through this pain, and why do I have to go through all this trouble? But I remember a strong intuitive voice coming in and just said, like, breathe, relax, don't worry about it. Let's just deal with this. Let's just stay on the road, let's just keep going. And the sound of that voice was very actually clear, and it sounded very soothing as well. And I had friends and I felt like I needed to be there for them as well, and to voice that sound of that voice. And in essence, that was a big step for me, because that was the step when, as soon as I surrendered to that, so many things started flowing. Positive things started flowing and coming my way. Things which were like great friendships and kindness of other people and opening up to new places and new experiences. And that is how I found myself on the first permaculture farm. And I remember as soon as I got on this place, it was quite a natural place which was very beautiful and in its environment. And this place just gave me the time to actually be away from the noise of the city, away from the noise of other people, and just be with nature. And at the same time, being gifted the literature to actually read upon what permaculture is. And these two words going together so beautifully, you know, by these two Australian gentlemen, the word permanence and culture, and how the idea and the ethics and principles got put together, make it such a beautiful toolkit that can be used by everybody, everywhere, around the world. It's a translatable and reprogrammable system where we can actually, in essence, find that we are the creators, that we can recreate ourselves and recreate our environments and work with nature and create beautiful ecosystems that can translate into abundance and peaceful places for us and for nature to co-create together. I have questioned myself many times about the word permanence and came to many conclusions, but the biggest one is how does permanence and culture work together? Well, actually, when we think about the word permanence or permanent, there is nothing permanent. Actually, the only thing that's permanent is change. So when we base the word permanence on change and we translate that into natural language, we find evolution. Evolution is always changing, but we don't really see it changing because it's not using a human biological clock, it's using a natural clock, which goes over hundreds, thousands, millions, billions of years. And that is how nature is actually using the permanence to create its own permanence, to create its own evolution. However, when we look into these mechanisms and systems, there's always these reoccurring patterns in nature. And the beauty of it is that this is kind of the verbs of a language, how nature is actually using these verbs over and over and over again, from the macrocosm to the microcosm, from the beauty and grandeur of space to the minuscule pieces in the soil. We see these repetitive patterns happening around us all the time. And when we learn to understand what these patterns are doing or what they are actually holding energetically in order to encapsulate energy and recreate and manifest into this third dimensional form that we're living in, we actually see that this language can actually be adapted by us, individually, in communities, and it can also be used as a language to recreate our systems and the places that we live in. And this is actually a great code, you know, this is actually the code of creation. And we don't really need to understand everything. In fact, one saying which I love to go by is, don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. And this doesn't mean that we shouldn't really aim for perfection. I myself love to, you know, in my own head, aim for perfection. Of course, that doesn't really exist, but it exists in another form. And in so saying, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It means that do not try and stop yourself from doing something just because it isn't perfect yet. Because in so creating, aiming for that perfection, but starting with the good, you start the flow of creation. And this for me is a great saying that I love to live by. I know and I understand that, you know, perfection isn't in my hands as yet, but I'm aiming for it in my own understanding, in my own psyche of creation. And by really encapsulating what I believe is good, not for myself and my ego, but for the greater good around me and for the good of others, is then when perfection kind of starts to reflect back in the environment around us and starts to feed us this feeling, and this feeling of grandeur, this feeling of, yes, I am actually at peace by doing this, because I'm not doing this for myself. This is something that I am doing because it's an energy that I have surrendered to. I'm accepting for this energy to flow through me, and I am just at its service. And I am at the stage today in life where I still feel the resistance. However, experience and knowledge, and probably a little bit of wisdom too, still gives you that instantaneous feedback of coming into yourself and saying, yes, okay, there is resistance coming up, but what is and where is the opportunity right now? And for me, this is why I really advocate permaculture as a lifestyle, because there's always this, one of the principles is accepting the feedback and checking in with the feedback and seeing as to what is there now and how can I adjust my design, my life design in the sense. I have been quite lucky to have been given an opportunity to develop what I learned in permaculture and put it into work. It hasn't been easy. There's been a lot of struggle, personal struggle, hardship of work, a lot of work that has been lost along the way, and you had to restart and recap again. But that doesn't stop us, and actually that is an opportunity for growth most of the time. And here we are in this place, Bahri Oasis, which is a project of love over these last 15 years. Bahri Oasis 15 years ago was quite a barren and desolate and microclimate, which was a complete garrigue. There was a lot of erosion points on the land. It was completely open and being windswept by the harsh winds that hit the area over here. In fact, we are just right on top of this valley here, which is Fomerih, which means in Maltese the mouth of the wind. And for many, many years, even the locals thought like nothing could grow here. It's just too wild, it's too open. But coming back from Australia and being really enthusiastic about adapting what I had learned in permaculture into something new, I started playing and toying up with the idea of creating a microclimate over here. And sure did. A number of years later, now this actually is a witness to the ability to create. It doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what you've got, it doesn't matter what you're working with, you can actually create. By using these patterns, by adapting these patterns into this design and following these principles and these ethics, everything is possible. And nowadays there is a whole ecosystem here that has so much diversity and also a lot of abundance in terms of food directly for humans, as well as a lot of other spaces and food for other creatures too. Because most of the time when we create something, we should not actually just be thinking about what can I do for us as myself or as a human community alone, but we also need to think in terms of whatever we create has got to be of making sense to other creatures as well. And this is the beauty of this actual science, this is the beauty of this actual design, where it translates itself for being this altruistic way of approaching life, which is just such a difference from a lot of other approaches, where you're creating this scenario of a multiple win situation, where you are recreating this multiple symbiotic relationship in nature, where you find it mostly in a healthy ecosystem. I always love to look and give the example of the forest, where in the forest we got this myriads of relationships between living components that are all synchronistically working together to uphold the ecosystem in itself, as being part of it, as being part of this whole symphony, but each one is actually sticking to their role. And the role of us human beings today is to adapt and work towards that, to actually encapsulate that wisdom, to embody the nature of the creation and work with it together. And 15 years later, after this has been accomplished, and now is home to host people here, to experience it firsthand, to have the experience of what it's like to be in a place like this, which looks so natural, but at the same time it's been done by hand. You know, the seeds have been put in, and the actual prime design has been actually thought of intellectually and then put in physically, but then nature has been allowed to come and play. You know, obviously when we say allowed, this is not from an ego point but from a loving point. You know, where actually with every step that you take, you are understanding that nature is going to come and play. The winds are going to hit, the rain is going to come, certain beings are going to act as pests, you know, and you have to always think ahead of these or around these and find these challenges as also opportunities. But 15 years later now, I got another opportunity to start this project in Portugal, and it's a complete different environment. It's something which I've always thought of, saying that okay, if I start another project, I don't really want to be in an arid and dry and windy environment such as here. I wanted to have it a bit easier. But really easier is different. There is nothing is easy. It's actually projecting the result of what you would like to reach. And when you don't do that, then everything is easy because you are allowing it to flow. You are just doing the work accordingly and allowing the rest to flow. And the opportunity now is to actually be in that presence and allow nature now to, from a different microclimate whatsoever, to actually give of itself more, and stepping back rather than be just so active in the action of creation and putting your energy and sweating through it. And for me, this is the stage of this next project. Yet at the same time, it's a great opportunity for others to participate in and allow the space to share this knowledge and embody this knowledge with others. And coming into it now, we are going to be there very soon to start another circle to create again these ideas and put them down on paper, and allowing this to be the next place of sharing and showing love together, as well as tasting different fruits and making new connections and friendships. Thank you.